Hi, everyone. Welcome to Turning Tension into Trust, how to have better relationships with parents. We're going to do a lot of really good work. And the intention, my commitment, my responsibility is that if you have taken the time to watch this now or watch it later, that you get something out of this that you feel you can apply to make your relationships with parents and the partnership you have with parents better. That is my responsibility, my commitment to you all, that you would come and join this group together. So that is the intention, and the intention is to be together as educators, to be able to be safe, to be able to talk about the challenges that we all have with parents, even in the best of times. So that is the intention. So with that, I'm going to turn it over just for a minute to Alini to tell you some things. Alini is oh no, she's in St. Louis right now, but she is
Hmm.
Brazilian and splits her time
Yeah.
between Sao Paulo and St. Louis. So Alini, take it. My
Yes,
pleasure to
yes.
introduce you to everyone.
Nice to meet you, everyone. So I work with Rosalind as her program manager. So maybe we communicate through emails. I sent an email for all of you today, this afternoon. So it's nice to meet you. If you need something regarding this webinar or for any future questions, you can feel free to contact me. Okay. And also thinking about this webinar and future webinars, we create a research, a little form, a little Google form that we'd like to ask you, please, for you kindly take a few minutes after the session or during your week to just fill out this form for us. And I'll just keep it in the chat and I'll pin top of the chat. So after the webinar, by any time you can do it. We appreciate to have your opinion. It's important for us. So have a great webinar.
Oh, thank you, Alini. All
You're
right, so
welcome.
this is going to be interactive, and we're going to do it in a couple of different ways. One is we want to get to know you all, and we want you all to know each other to the extent that you feel comfortable. Now, I am a teacher who does not call on students unless they want to be called on. So that's really important to me. So what I would like to do is I'm going to ask you to put things in chat. I am going to do a breakout room because I'm going to go over some scripts with you, but then I'm going to give you a scenario or two. It depends on how much we get through. I'm going to give you a scenario or two to work together and then come back. My teaching style is that we stick when we get to a good place. Like if you all are having a really good back and forth or want to ask more questions, we're going to stick there. So, and then we're going to move, one of my responsibilities is to move us forward, but also if we're in a good place, we're going to stick so that you feel like you're getting what you need. Because on this call, I am not the only expert. Everybody on this call is an expert in education and an expert in your community. So we're going to take my expertise, your expertise, the collective expertise, and then we're going to really work together to be able to do better by our work with parents. So here's what we're going to do. And really, it's so cool that there are so many people coming from so many different places. It's so cool. So here we are. Now, by the way, in the gallery, if you want to make my face, if you go to the gallery view, you can do it so that my face, if you want to see this, and instead of me being like a little small square in the corner, you can do gallery view and then it'll give you selection so that you can have me a little bit bigger and split it with the screen. So that's you can do that if you would like. So here is welcome to turning tension into trust. And I really do want to say, oh, and I forgot to get it. Shoot. This has been an ongoing challenge for me as a teacher, which is that one time I got so frustrated working with parents that I actually had to write a book about it because I had to process it. So this has been something I've dealt with for a long time. And so I wanted to share with you some of the things that you all said when I asked you, like, what did you want? Like, what are you struggling with? And here they are. Here's a few. When conversations with parents begin with tension or mistrust, what is one communication habit educators can practice consistently that helps shift the dynamic from us versus them to a shared partnership focused on the child? What do you do when parents get personal, blaming individuals and sometimes teams for causing harm to their children? How do we clearly define parent-school partnership? I need a framework to support teachers to like it's to for excuse me, that was my fault, not the teachers, to maintain agency and professional integrity when faced with unreasonable demands and requests from parents. I would like the ability to listen carefully during difficult conversations without being emotionally affected by what parents or students might say. You are going to be emotionally affected because you're actually a human being. But it's how we manage it, right? That this is what this is about. But you are a human being. I want to stay calm, truly understand their concerns, and respond in a respectful and thoughtful way. I am respectful, but it drains me. Of course it does. My goal is to ensure that even challenging meetings can end in a positive, friendly, and collaborative way. I would like to prepare effectively for difficult parent meetings and respond professionally to emails from parents who advocate strongly for their child without having the full picture. I love advocate strongly. What strategies can we use to not feel overwhelmed by triggering emails? Okay, so that was some of the feedback that I got from you all. Before I move on to anything else, we all need to really remember that we are being asked in some ways to be perfect, and we are not perfect. And it is difficult. And we have to give ourselves, this is the space to be able to give ourselves some grace and to be able to ask the questions and to be able to say, like, I don't feel like being in partnership with them all of the time. This is a place to be able to do that. So, what I'm going to ask you right now, and you're going to put this in the chat, is what is your tell? What is the tell that if I was sitting across from you and you were getting super irritated by what you're sitting across from the table from a parent, or you're reading that email, what is your tell that you are getting really angry, really frustrated, so that somebody else would know? So I want you to put that in the chat. Okay. I'm going to give you a minute to be like, what is my tell? What is the tell that I'm about to lose my mind with these people? Okay. So put that in the chat, please. I'm going to put you on a timer. You might even have two or three tells. You might have like the first tell is sighing. The second tell is like, if you have long hair, is to like put up your hair in a bun, right? So, uh, I'll give you another example. Another example could be when you start answering things like, yeah, 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 right? Someone's talking to you and you start going, uh-huh, 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 uh-huh. That could be another tell. There's lots of them. So let's put that in the chat. Cody. I'd like to see Cody's look of disbelief. Like, was his eyes go like, what? Are you getting the other people that want to come into the waiting room and from the waiting room, please? I think there's a few more. Um, okay. Oh, timer. Timer is done. All right. So we all have tells. We all do. We're all human. So the thing I want you to do, what I'm asking you to do, is be mindful of this when you are going into that, when you're going into that conversation. Like, the look of disbelief, like that I saw with Cody, or the like I talked about, like I put up my hair because I need to do something with my hands. When you feel that, what I want you to do is think about what is something you can do to offset your tell. Your tell is human and you might be able to stop it. But if you do feel it, I just want you to take a minute right now to commit to yourself. You could even write this down. What are you going to do to offset the tell? Because they know it, right? They can pick up on it immediately. And you can say to yourself, I'm not saying anything wrong, but you did your tell. And then it upped the anxiety and it upped the hostility. Okay. So right now I just want you to think about what is the thing I'm going to do that is going to offset my tell. Okay. See, this webinar is sort of like therapy, actually. So sort of. Okay. Now, by the way, throughout the whole webinar, if you have a question, just pop up your hand emoticon thing and just ask me because we're going to make this as interactive as possible. Okay, now I want you to realize that you are not alone. Here is what came from the last webinar we did. I keep bumping into the unspoken and sometimes explicit customer service mode that faculty and admin slip into during parent meetings. We absorb stuff that's not just unproductive, but harmful, like raised voices, personal jabs, and ultimatums. When does this parent is dysregulated and working through something hard become this isn't okay and I need to name it? A lot of us have internalized that being professional means taking whatever parents dish out. That is not okay. It is not okay. Even if they're paying tuition at the school, it is not okay. Not only is it not okay because it's just not okay, but it also creates situations and power dynamics in the school where we actually can't do right by our kids. When parents go directly to the head of school to make coordination harder and can undermine trust and shared understanding. Parents acting in disbelief and refusing to believe the things you shared, especially if you're a younger teacher. And I would add, if you don't have children yourself, like children that you have brought into the world yourself. How do you handle conversations with parents who think other kids are at fault when their kid needs social coaching to navigate a situation as well? And there have been moments when parents focus more on my tone or response rather than on their child's behavior, which has made it difficult to feel fully understood and valued as an educator. Okay, so before we go on, this is what the other people, because I did one about a month ago, and I wanted to share with you that you're not alone. So, anybody have anything that they would like to share right now that we need to just put out there before we move on? Are we good? If I see a hand, let's see. So Sophia, did I say, oh, we're good? Sophia's raising her. Okay. All right, we're good. Let me see. I got to check on my people. All right. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next. Okay. Remember I said was not going to be therapy. Here's a big question. These two next slides are actually incredibly important, and well, all the slides are important, but because I choose them carefully. But I really want, this is one of the things I want you to think about after the webinar. So, how did you learn to stand up for yourself? How did you learn to do it? And I would like for you to write it down or to put it in your phone or just think about it. And however you want to describe that, how I'm not going to ask people to share. This is a pretty intense question to ask, but it's absolutely essential to understanding how we manage ourselves with parents, because so often they become a dynamic of power, of displaying power on one side or the other. So I'd like for you to write down, think about, put on your phone, however is best for you. How did you learn how to stand up for yourself when you were growing up? See, 44. Give you about 50 seconds to answer this question for you. And for those of you who are in international schools, or you could be in the same country and from the same country that you are teaching in, but from a different community. Was the culture in which you were raised and learned to stand up for yourself maybe different than what has happened than the culture of your school? Okay, that's another thing to think about too. Okay. All right. So the how of this is that we actually know from social science that the experiences that we have when we are young about how we learn to manage conflict and how we learn to stand up for ourselves when we can't, these are all things of what I call the invisible operating system. The invisible operating system are the social patterns that set when we are young, and they wait in the background until we feel a power imbalance in our relationships. So, obviously, and many of you teach adolescents and obviously or teach people that are younger than that. is that young people, we all, no matter what generation we're from, we are all learning about how to navigate, how to advocate for ourselves, how to stand up for ourselves, how to manage conflict, how to give feedback when we're angry. When we are in adolescence, we are learning really important lessons, for better and for worse, about how we have power or how we don't have power when we advocate for ourselves. And some of those lessons set. Now, what's complicated is that if you've ever had the experience as an adult, when you're in a faculty meeting or when you're in the adult world and you're thinking, why are the adults acting like they're 12 years old? Why do we default back to, why are these people around me acting like that? Why are they seemingly so mature, like when I'm talking to them, but we get into a meeting and then they can't say anything, or they bully somebody else, or they don't back up somebody else? It is the invisible operating system. It is that some of the lessons that we have learned when we are young sit in the background, and when there is a power imbalance, it comes right up. And it's really hard to be aware of it, actually. And we can see it sometimes in other people, but we don't think about it as like, how is and why is this happening? And so the invisible operating system is something I want you to think about when you, in your toolkit of how am I going to be an educator in this world? How am I going to show up with parents? One of the things that answers many of the questions that we began with in that first slide has to do with your internal reflection and communication on an ongoing basis about what is your invisible operating system and how is it showing up with parents. Because for many of you, there's lots of reasons why this would be the case where there's a power imbalance. You could be younger than the parents. You could not have children, right? Like I said a few minutes ago. You could be from a different socioeconomic class than your parents. You could be all different kinds of things. And so there's these invisible power dynamics between parents and teachers, and sometimes those patterns are actually made visible. Like when a parent goes above your head and goes to a principal, that's actually a pretty explicit power flex, right? And how you respond to that, in large part, is about your invisible operating system. So the more you can think about this, and the more you can think about how this is impacting how you are interacting with people who have more or less power than you, then the more you'll be able to be grounded actually in the way that you show up. So this webinar in a lot of ways is really about you. So I'm going to give you those scripts that people asked me for when they emailed me about this is why they wanted to be a part of this. But the scripts are only as good as your ability to communicate them authentically, powerfully, with integrity. And so doing this work is actually the foundation to be able to communicate and navigate this kind of shifting dynamics that happen in parent communications. So it's a deep thing to think about, and I'm asking you to think about it after this webinar as the thought, like an ongoing way of thinking about how am I showing up. All right, connected to that is, and if you've heard me speak or listened to some of the writing I've been doing recently, connected to David Yeager's work, how you learned how to stand up for yourself, your invisible operating system connects to the mindsets that we have as educators and how we interact with children. So it has educators and parents interact with children. So when you do a teacher parent meeting, and if you had, it's March, this is why I did them in March, so that because you might have teacher conference meetings around the corner, is that you will see in front of your parents, when your parents are in front of you or talking to you on the phone on some kind of call, is the enforcer mindset or the protector mindset. So the enforcer mindset, it has high expectations but low support. So we're going to talk about it as a parent. So the parent is, I'm going to hold you to high expectations, but you got to get there yourself. And if you make a mistake, that is on you. So that's the enforcer mindset. And then there's a thing that comes that's not bad, which is we want high expectations for young people, for all of us. On the other side is the protector mindset, which has low expectations but high support. So, accommodating the child, not holding them accountable, and because of that, what we do is we signal to the child that we don't believe they can meet those expectations. So, what you see sometimes as a teacher when you, for example, have parent conferences and you've got two parents, if you do, is that you can sometimes see an enforcer and a protector within the same family, right? You had a parent who's protecting and a parent who's enforcing. And so there you are, sitting as an educator, looking at these people's their parenting and their relationship. And yeah, I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I can see some of you nodding. We're like, oh my gosh, I can see this entire relationship in front of me, and it's making me so uncomfortable. I don't know what to do. So we also, as teachers, by the way, of course, can have an enforcer mindset and a protector mindset. And it's not, in my experience, as simple as, hey, I'm the enforcer. This is who I am. I'm always like this. In my experience, actually, teachers, because of their invisible operating system, because of the way they were raised for lots of different reasons, and really oftentimes for the best of intentions, is that they could be an enforcer for some students and a protector for others. So again, that can show up in the way you communicate with parents and actually how you see the behavior of children and then how you translate it and communicate it to parents. So again, my point of being self-reflective and mindful about the way in which you are in this equation is really the most important thing. So, mentor mindset is what we're going for, is about providing high expectations with high support. So, the scripts that I'm going to give you are all connected to, they are the words, the expression of high expectations and high support. And so, when I'm going to ask you to create the scripts, I'm asking you to do, keep in mind constantly what are the high expectations and high support that you need to communicate, not only with the student, but with the parents. Do we have any questions, concerns, comments at this point? Insights you would like to share or things that you need clarification on? Do I? I want to make sure. Okay. All right. Okay. I can see a lot of you nodding, so I'm thinking we're on a good page. Okay. So here's now what I would like for you to think about, and then have one or two people share their thoughts about this. So think back about how you were taught to be an educator, either the way you went to school, if you went to, to get your degree in education, but there's lots of teachers who specialize in a subject like math or chemistry or whatever, and didn't go to teaching college and things like that. So, however, you answer the question of think back to how you were taught to be an educator. Which mindset were you mostly trained to model with students? The enforcer, the protector, or the mentor? So I want you to think back to how you have learned to be an educator, because we have our iOS, but we have the way you were taught, the way you were trained. So I'm going to give you a minute to think about this, and I'd love two people to share some insights that they have about this. I'm going to put you on my minute thing, or you can put it in the chat. Okay. Let's get some insights from you all. I have been talking too much.
Um, for me, I remember when I
Wait,
was
Sophia, where are you? I would love
I'm
to
in
know
El
who
Salvador.
in El Salvador. Hi.
Yes, hi. For me, when I remember back to university, I remember being taught to be a mentor, like high expectations, high support. But I remember the high expectations part a lot. And the support, I don't remember like do high support, but like differentiate. And I remember those terms, not the term high support as much.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you. All right, Mrs. Claire, you are, please talk, please share.
Right.
Oh, and where are you from?
Oh, first of all, I'm Irish, but I'm living in Bahrain. I've been here for over 40 years. And for me, it's actually 3 o'clock in the morning. So hence my coffee just to keep me awake. So a pleasure to
Thank
be
you
here
for
with you
joining
all.
us.
My pleasure. I would say with the type of teaching that I do, we do a lot of encouraging independence within the students rather than spoon feeding. So I would say initially I was trained in the as a high enforcer, as an enforcer, having high expectations, but being more hands off, not doing it for them. I show them this is what I want you now to go and try it because you learn a lot through practice on your own. But I would say over the last 25 to 30 years that I've been involved in education, I find that I'm moving towards being a mentor because offering high support is not always offering high academic support, but emotional support. And I think if you have that emotional support for your students, they trust you, then you can have those high expectations because they know you're not going to ask them to jump off a cliff without a safety net being there. So I would say my support is more emotional than academic because I still want independence from my students. But I'm definitely there for them and I will talk to them about whatever they want to talk about because we have that relationship of trust.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to add to the conversation? I have a thought that Mrs. Claire put forward I want to highlight. Anyone else would like to add?
Hi, I'm
Hi,
Kathy,
Kathy. Where are you from?
El Salvador.
Okay, welcome.
I think in my case, right, that I studied psychology, so then I became a teacher. Um, in our country, you are more um, a type of of an enforcer, maybe. That's how the system works and the education works. So, but then with the experience I have been getting through the years, I think mentor is what we all want to be most of the time, right? But sometimes the hectic day with the kids, and depending on the age, you try, but sometimes that's why I ask, can it be a mix of some? Because it tends to change for me throughout the days, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me give you an example of that, that speaks to what you all are talking about, or that I don't have a slide here, but I just want to say it, which is I was at a school yesterday and we had a really wonderful conversation about the following thing, that when a child does not do well on a test or a paper, there are a couple reasons why. We'll choose two. One is that they pretend or they have convinced themselves that they don't care because they're too frustrated and it's just easier in some ways to pretend that they're apathetic. Or that they've convinced themselves that they're apathetic because for whatever reason, they're not getting the material and they're not engaged in the material. Or another way is that they've tried really, really hard and then they didn't do well on the exam or the paper. And so you're the teacher and you see that they are not doing well. They haven't done well. And you think to yourself, like, how do I talk to them about this? And it goes to what Mrs. Claire was talking about, and then also Kathy, like you're talking about, like, the day is busy. How do we do this? And it doesn't take that much time to remember that the high expectations and high support in that situation is always going to be the following, which is to acknowledge to the student that they need to feel their feelings first. That, like as a teacher, to say to them, hey, I know you didn't do as well as you were hoping on the exam. That must be really frustrating. Would you like to just feel those feelings first? Or do you want to talk about your feelings about it, about your frustrations about it? You want to talk about that first? And then when you're ready, but of course we have to give them limited options because they do need to talk to us at some point. But at when you're ready, then we're going to talk about what happened on the exam, what happened on the project, about why you didn't get the grade that you needed or wanted or thought you were going to get. So we separate high support is first because their feelings are going to hijack their ability to think through and listen to anything that you are saying about how they are supposed to do better. And once we do that and we acknowledge that, then they are much more able to engage in whatever it is that we're trying to teach them. But so often we go to the enforcer mindset of high expectations of you've disappointed me or you've disappointed yourself. They've got their parents talking to them in the back of their head too, right? And so we go straight to enforcer because we don't think about it's harder for us to think about how they are feeling, which is a mixture of frustration, of shame, of thinking that maybe they're never going to get better, they're never going to figure this out, right? They catastrophize the situation. They hate you because they blame you for the problem. So we have to separate the feelings and give that the support first. And then when their brains have calmed down about that, then we can go to the expectations of and we can walk them through what they need to do better. So that's a really important thing that we also are going to share with parents because you know that when young people don't do well, their parents sometimes often unfortunately default to going to the expectations first instead of the support. Okay. So, Kathy, that's both, right? And we don't need to spend 4 hours on it. We don't need to show all different kinds of, you don't need a program for it. We just need to remember that high support is usually first, and then we can get to the expectations of what we need to do better. Okay. So, any clarifying things we need before I move on? We good? Okay. Okay. All right, so let's move on. So some of you know this, but I think if you don't, it just goes with high expectations and high support. That we have respect is earned, that the definition of respect is that we admire someone's actions. And in comparison, the dignity is a given, which is the inherent worth of each of us. And even if you've seen this before, I've been doing this work for so long and I always see this in a different way. I keep diving into the deepness of this work. And so because young people are so power sensitive and they are so scared oftentimes about what's happening with their parents and you, and that's when the conflicts really happen, right, between you and the parents. When things get uncomfortable, is that we often forget that there's a child in the middle of it who is sometimes communicating different things to different people. And also has relationships of power with all of the adults that are a part of this, right? The teacher, the parents, all of this. And we can't know specifically what's going on, but you can keep in your heart and your mind that the child that's in the center of this relationship between you and the parents has some kind of complicated relationship with respect and needs to be seen as a worthy person, needs to be acknowledged for their experiences, and that we have to be curious about what those experiences are. And that the young person, when they've come to you, has also, just like you has probably have had to show respect to someone in a position of authority who's denying the dignity of others. And so that's can be the invisible power dynamics that are going on. And the thing that I want you to remember for this webinar is that if you are being treated in a way that you feel is disrespectful by parents because they are disrespecting your work and commitment to the craft of education and the craft of educating their child, that you don't need to respect the actions of that parent, but you do need to treat them with dignity. So if you are sitting across the table from a parent who has a lot more social economic power than you do, or has been, for whatever reason, has more power than you do, and they are wielding and flexing that power, those actions do not need to be respected, but that person does need to be treated with dignity. And the thing that happens with teachers is that when we get to a place where we feel like we're being disrespected, we can sometimes not be the people we need to be. And so, if we are able to hold this thing of dignity in our hearts and minds, we are going to be able to be much more solid in the way that we talk to parents. It's much harder to get us sort of wobbly. Or say it in a positive way, we are more steady on our feet when we are focused on dignity. So here's what to always to remember is treating someone with respect looks the same as treating them with dignity. I don't want you getting in trouble with your admin. Even there are some admin on this call. I don't want you to have calls that you get too many calls and emails. So treating someone with respect looks the same as treating them with dignity, but the experience of it is entirely different. One feels like submission, the other feels like empowerment. It is entirely different. And so, when there are things that parents consistently will do when they get emotionally hijacked for various reasons, when they are acting out, is that they will question. It is common, unfortunately, to question your competence or your integrity. And my experience with teachers is that when that happens, we can take the bait and we can flex power back. We can try and bully back. And when we do that, we are losing, right? We're never going to win that because what I mean by win is be the educators that we want to be and be the educator that our children need us to be. So this is a really important moment. When you feel like your competence or integrity is questioned, it is so difficult not to justify, to go back at them. So we remember when we compete in demanding respect, it is a race to the bottom. But when we compete in demanding dignity, it is a race to the top. So people can do things like this to you, and then you're going to do your tell, right? Like I first talked about, you're going to do your tell. So when you feel your tell, I want you to remember we are competing for demanding dignity, and you will settle. You will settle. It'll help you. So with that, what I've done, I hope you think this is funny. I thought it was funny. So here are two seals. I have taken the SEAL acronym, like that, that I have this thing in my social emotional learning program. And SEAL, like lots of SEL programs, you have like this acronym. The kids always hate it because it's cheesy, right? And I want to be very, very clear about SEAL that it is not a scripted way to talk about something. It's not. What SEAL is only a strategy to think through how to communicate. So you've got your dignity and respect as your grounding foundation, right? But SEAL is a way to make that a little bit more granular. And then I was thinking about that actually, and I'm curious, you're expert, so you take this for what it's worth, is that for a long time I've thought about what you see here, that these are 4 steps. You stop, you remember your iOS, you breathe, you take 2 seconds, like literally 2 seconds to really look at the people in front of you, and look at them and be like, what am I dealing with here, right? Enforcer, protector, then remember the mentor mindset. I'll just remember high expectations, high support, high expectations, high support. Then explain using wise feedback, which is the work I did with David Yeager, to convey high standards or expectations and a belief that you all can meet the standards with concrete guidance on how to do so. And you, even if you don't have children, because this has come up a lot with the people that have reached out to me, some of the younger teachers, is that I would think of you as the senior partner in this relationship with parents because you see lots of children. No matter how parents have like 1, 2, maybe 4 children, maybe 5 children, you see tons of children. You see the whole panoply. And some of us have been doing this work. By the time you've been teaching for 3 years, this means that you've been teaching and interacting with like 150 kids at least, right? So you have a whole kind of very quickly, you accumulate wisdom. So I want you to think of yourself as the senior partner in these relationships with parents. So we want to use wise feedback to convey high standards and expectations in a belief that you all can meet these standards with concrete guidance on how to do so. And you're going to provide the guidance or you're going to come up with it together. We're going to affirm and acknowledge everyone's dignity and anything you did that contributed to the problem or anything the school, like in general, and I'll explain how to do that without saying something bad about somebody at school because we don't want to do that. We want to support the school. And then we want to lock in the partnership. So wise feedback is the definition of it is when you communicate high standards and you explicitly say, I believe we can meet them and here's how. So you're also another way of looking at this is saying this matters, you matter, and we're going to figure this out together, right? That's the driving message that we've got to get across to parents. So wise feedback, high standards, and you explicitly say, I believe we can meet them and here's how. What's great about communicating mentor mindset to parents in this way with high standards and high support is that you are to use this language, you're basically giving the love language to both mindsets, right? The enforcer mindset wants to hear high expectations. So when you're talking high expectations, their brains are going, okay, okay, okay. And when you're talking high support, the protector is like, okay, okay, okay. So it quiets each of them down. All right. Okay, so we're speaking each to each of them in their love language. Okay, so this is now remember I gave you, and you'll see actually I emailed you the slide deck, and you're also going to see it in a minute. Okay, so here's your first script that I'm going to give you. We're going to do a couple based on the feedback that you've given me, and I'm going to ask you to do one for yourselves. Okay, so here's one. This is for the new teacher, the person who's not been around that much. Mr. Chen is a first-year teacher. He has a student, Diego, who makes sarcastic comments, interrupts, and ignores redirections. That never happens. Okay, after documenting patterns and trying tier 1 interventions, he schedules a meeting with Diego's parents. They answer by seeing the principal, and now the assistant principal is in this meeting. So the principal, is not coming in, but they did send in an administrator. During the meeting, Diego's mom dominates the conversation and listens with arms crossed and then says, I've never heard any of this before. Are you sure you're not overreacting? This is your first year teaching, right? Maybe you're still figuring things out. She directs questions to the assistant principal and barely makes eye contact with Mr. Chen, right? Because the eye contact thing is a big deal. That is such a power flex where you're just looking at the person with more power, and the person with less power is like, I actually teach your child. I'm the person who actually hangs out with Diego, by the way. I'm the person who knows more. Okay. So here is the script, mentor mindset script. You're right. I'm early in my teaching career, right? Acknowledge it. You have nothing to be embarrassed about that. Because remember, you're spending more time with people's children. I'm also spending many hours a week with Diego in the classroom. What I'm sharing is based on specific patterns of behavior I've seen over time and the intervention strategies we have used thus far. My goal is for us to work together so he can be successful. How does that sound to you? So you are saying what you are without apology, either way, and you are sharing what you know without being like trying to power over. So this is for a first year teacher or somebody where you get the power flex from the parent who is not giving you, and I'm using this word on purpose, the respect that you deserve because you are the person who actually works with the student. Okay? All right. Before I move on, I'd like to check in with you all. Any questions, insights, or additional thought? Yes, Mrs. Claire, please go ahead.
I love in that reframe that there is no but, because I think the language that you're right, I'm early in my teaching career, but I'm also spending, there you're sort of apologizing. The fact that the word but is not there, I think is super powerful.
I hadn't even thought of that. Thank you. I think the and is usually a better word to use. Yes, thank you. That's great. That is a great, that's actually great advice in general for teachers. Thank you for that. Let me see. Anyone else? Are we good? Okay. Okay. All right. Let's go on to our next situation. Oh no, excuse me. I got ahead of myself. So this is also really about boundaries. And I define, boundaries maybe a little differently than you've heard before. And the thing that I think about boundaries is helps me with young people. So I think of them as windows. They let us see in and out clearly with the option to open more or close more, depending on what keeps everyone's dignity intact, right? So there's some themes here that I'd like you to be honing in on that I'm like saying to you consistently. They help us make brave choices instead of reactive ones. They steady relationships when emotions run high. They stop catastrophizing and stay with what actually happened. Decide when to open up more to a parent and when to close the window part way to protect our dignity. And in meetings, your boundary is not a slammed door. It's not a slammed window. It's a window, right? Opening the window. You get to decide how far it opens, how long, and under what conditions. So let me give you the reason why I think of them as windows. It really didn't come from working with adults. It came from working with kids because so many teachers will and parents will say to children, if they're struggling in a class and they have a child who's a bad and who's, making them laugh or distracting them or whatever it is. And then the parent or the adult will say that child's a bad influence on you. And what if these children are friends? Or what if the child who's making the other kid laugh or distracting them has social power? Well, the way that young people hear when we talk about that, it feels like we're giving them an ultimatum. Like you cannot interact with that child. And if you can't stop it, right, there's something wrong with you. The message we're sending is high expectations, but low support, right? Is that when we say to a kid, that child is bringing you down, bad influence, he's distracting you, that's why you're not doing well in school. Children hear it as an ultimatum and they hear that we're disappointed or failing some way if they can't do exactly what we're saying. And then sometimes we like move them to another place, to another seat. And sometimes that's appropriate, but I want us to realize how it comes across to kids because nobody does well with ultimatums. And young people in particular have a really hard time they have to be in relationship with these students, like their friends or the person that's next to them. And so if they are doing that, they're going to deal with the social consequence of creating that boundary. And as adults, we often forget that. We don't see the context in which that child is having to make that decision. So that's how I came up with this visual of windows. That windows, so when I say to young people, okay, you're out on the soccer pitch, you're out on the soccer field, and you're going to your sixth period English class and you're with your friend who always gets you in trouble because you laughs or he does something obnoxious, whatever. So when you're going from the soccer field to the classroom, your window is starting to close, right? Like sort of halfway, maybe 3/4 of the way. And if you close it all the way, you can still see your friend. It's not a wall, right? It's not a wall. And then during class, like how much do we want this window to be open, right? Let me ask them, like, a little bit, this much, right? At what point of the window being open do you think you're going to get in trouble with me? Right? That's what I would say. At what point of this window being open is it going to become a problem for me to teach you in the class? And so what we do is we're asking young people to come up with like, where do they fall? So it's similar with us is that when we're working with parents and it starts to get difficult, I want you to think about the window going up and down. It's not an ultimatum. It's not, I'm never seeing you again. But if a parent gets really angry at you, and pretty much, if you've been in education for some amount of time, you're going to have two things happen to you. One is you're going to have a parent who's going to like say really rude things to you. And the second thing that's going to happen is that it happens to most teachers. There's a few who are more mature. I'm not one of them, where you have this bad experience and then you assume that every parent is like that. And so every time a parent comes to you and says, "Can I talk to you for a second?" You're like, "No way." Because you think that it's going to be this horrible, horrible thing. So I really want us to think about, first of all, not catastrophizing, right? Because not all parents are terrible and they're not going to cuss you out. And if they do, you don't have to respect those actions. You do need to treat them with dignity, which means you establish boundaries, your window closes, right? Your window closes. And so that's when, with this visual, that's when you're going to say to parents something like, "I really want to hear you, and what we're talking about is really important, and I can't when you are speaking to me this way. So do you want to take a moment to get yourself together, or do you want to reschedule the meeting?" Right? That should be your default answer. When you've got somebody who's getting emotionally hijacked and dysregulated, which literally I mean is calling you out, is being rude, is threatening you, is saying bad words, It's not a wall. It's not an ultimatum. It's not a catastrophe. You're going to live. It is a moment of, yeah, I'm really sorry, but I can't do this right now because the way you're speaking to me is I just can't do that right now. But if you want to talk about it later, you can take a moment or we can reschedule, right? Window comes down. Dignity, you don't have to respect the person's actions. Treat the person with dignity. Boundary is coming down. Okay. Um, Agnes, do you have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if this a way of talking to parents would get us in trouble uh with like, like our superiors, like, maybe they will
Yeah.
go back to them and say, "Hey, you know, she just told me we can reschedule because uh she didn't like the way I was talking to her." So that's sometimes that is in the back of our minds,
Yeah.
and it could be something that we can't stop, that we think we can't stop. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know what I
Well,
mean? It's
sure. Well, I think there's two things, and if any administrators are on this call, if you want to add to your wisdom here, I think there's two things, Agnes. One is that if you can at all help it appropriate, there should be two people in the room, right? And the second is that beforehand, I also think that going to your administrator and also putting it in some kind of protocol that the parents should read, they're probably maybe not read, but like should read,
Mhm.
is, hey, if I have a difficult conversation with a parent, like you can say to your supervisor, if it's not in your handbook and you're right, if it's not in your handbook and you've got this meeting coming tomorrow and you go to the supervisor and say, hey, I've got this hard conversation with the parent and I'm concerned about it. If they say bad words to me, if they say, those kinds of things to me, here's my prepared response. How do you feel about that? So I would get ahead of it to be able to say, so that you even walk in with more confidence about to address the issue that you're concerned about.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
but you're welcome. And I also think this is something that, a lot of schools have in their handbook, which is when you meet with teachers, we expect, mutual respect, mutual treating of dignity, and that includes words that are right, not using bad words. Okay. Does
Yeah.
anybody thank you for that, Agnes, because that's a
Mhm.
very understandable concern that people have.
Mhm.
Okay. Anyone else have concerns about that or concerns around that?
Rosalind, I can just jump in for a second as an administrator.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I just really always want my teachers to be treated with respect and dignity. So, and I know how situations with parents can get tense. So, I certainly support my teachers in setting those boundaries and making sure that they're protecting themselves. And then things do escalate to me sometimes, and I have to, jump in. But I would support teachers in those boundaries. It's really important. You don't deserve to be treated poorly. So,
Is there anything that I said that you would want to do differently or add on to?
no, I think the reframing is great, and the script that you're giving is great. So thank you.
Okay. All right. It's good to check in with, the supervisor person, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Yep.
much. Okay. Anybody else raising their hand? I don't think so right now. Okay. So let's go to another script. Um, the moment, the reframe. So, I moved you all. Let's go over here. Okay. So the moment you're being asked to promise not to say where you got your information from, right? Like, I'm telling you this just so you need to know. You need to know that this thing is happening in your class, but you can't say where you got it from, but you have to do something about it, right? You have to do something about it. And then the natural consequence of doing something about it is people are going to say, why? Why are you doing this? But you're not allowed to say. That's an impossible situation. So here's the reframe. I really appreciate you sharing this with me. If it's not necessary to use your name to address the problem, we're going to keep your name out of it. But I can't promise that because there are some situations where we have to back up where we got the information. Can I ask, what are you most worried about if someone knew this came from you? So that's high support, right? High support. My goal is to make sure your family is supported and that your child and other children know we care about them and will appropriately intervene when it's needed. What I can promise, high expectations, is that you will be informed if and when we need to say where the information came from, and we will support you through the process. So you are holding yourself to a high expectation in that situation, right? You are making an expectation promise here, which I would strongly suggest that you follow through on. But this is high expectations, high support, sort of coming through, right? Coming sort of integrated through the words. Um, if you have not written, oh, I didn't say this with the script. I want you to put this in your own words, right? Because if it's just like this, it's going to sound not like you, and then it's not going to come across as you, and then that's a problem. So it's really important to take these scripts and make them your own. And if you think, and there is no way, there is no teacher in the world who has not had this experience, right? Every single teacher has had somebody come up to them and say, hey, you need to know what's going on, but you can't say where you got it from. So I strongly encourage you on your phone, and like you have like your like default scripts that you have that something's happening, and you start creating default scripts for yourself. And this would be one of them where you take this and then you create your own so that when this happens, you're like, oh, I already know what I'm going to do. And then it's when you're in the situation, it's not going to go perfectly, but it's going to go a lot better. It's going to be a lot harder for you to get, sort of wobbly, like I talked about a few minutes ago. Okay, one more. You have done something. Do you remember from the comments that like sometimes we come across in the wrong way with the parents? And this could you choose your adventure on how you can come across in the wrong way. You might disagree with that. That doesn't matter. So, so if you have done something that somehow is not landed in the right way, you got to own it. So, and that does not put you in a weaker position. It doesn't. Being able to own and say, okay, this is the way I came across, I acknowledge that is very powerful. So, first, I want to acknowledge that I came across as uncaring or that I wasn't taking this seriously. And I'm sorry for that. I do take this seriously. It's my responsibility to uphold your child's dignity in my class. Then they say something, instead of saying thank you so much, they say something, well, yeah, right, because you've been doing this for all this time and this is right. They say something that just like, gets you back on edge. So it sounds like you may not believe my apology or whether things will really change. Am I hearing that right? Now, here's the thing for affirm and acknowledge that I was talking about when I talked about SEAL. Have you had other experiences here that made it hard to trust that we will follow through for your child? Because sometimes parents will bring in baggage from other experiences at the school and then they put it on you. And you are trying to figure out what in the world is going on. Why are they coming at you at 1,000,000 miles an hour? Why do they assume that it's not going to go well or that you're not going to follow through? There are parents who bring the experiences they've had at the school to the situation. So, really important to be able to say without undermining anybody's dignity or anybody at the school to acknowledge, am I hearing that right? Or have you had other experiences here that make it hard to trust that we'll follow through with your child? It's really important to me that your child feels supported and listened to. How do you want your child to feel as we move forward? And what do you think is most important for them to learn from this experience? This is literally high support, high expectations. What do you want this child to learn from this experience? And it doesn't matter if the child, whatever the problem is, it doesn't matter because those two questions are integral to being able to come across in a mentor mindset with parents, with that enforcer and protector mindset. It's their love language, right? No matter what happens, it's a social problem, perpetrator, bystander, target, academic problem, whatever. It's what do you want your child to feel as we move forward? And what do you think is most important for them to learn? Those are the two questions. Thank you for staying with me in this conversation. Okay? All right. Now, I got to see, I'm taking my time. Okay, before we end our meeting, wait, where's my thing? Did I not move this? Okay, here we are. QR code. I'm going to give you some time. Now we're going to go into stop share. All right. I'm just going to say, take that, find that QR code. I have checked it 3 times. I am really hope that's a slide deck because I've tried 3. I believe this is the right slide deck. I also emailed it to you. So take the slide deck, take the QR code. Okay. Does anybody have a problem with not get everyone got it? Everyone, no one, everyone's good. Okay. Tell Alini, chat at Alini if you have a problem with the slide deck. Okay.
Uh,
Here,
I didn't get it, but that's fine. I have
check
my
your email.
daughter's. Uh,
Check your email, Agnes. It's in your email. We did it both
Can
ways.
can I open it without my phone? I don't have my phone here.
I think so. Pretty sure. I mean, if you check your email, you'll be able to click on it.
Okay.
It's
So if you
from
minimize that, you can click on it.
it's
So
the
I'm
same
gonna
one from your
stop.
email.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop the share. I hope I do this right. So everyone's got the thing. I want you to read together. We're gonna read together this situation. Okay? So we've got a seventh grade teacher has noticed ongoing tension. Ava reports feeling excluded. Ms. Rivera observes she sees a mix, right? Because things don't go on just one way. Sometimes other girls are unkind or laugh at inside jokes in front of Ava. Other times, Ava jumps into conversations without reading the room, follows them, escalates small conflicts. So she schedules a meeting with the parents whose children are involved. The first meeting is with Ava's parents. In the meeting, Ava's mom says, middle school girls are just brutal. Ava comes home crying every day, and no one is doing anything about it, which is like no one means you. Every time Ms. Rivera tries to mention skills Ava is still learning, like reading cues, Ava's mother redirects blame to their girls or the parents, insists they're all bullies. So I'm going to stop the share. What I'd like for you to do, is 1, 2, 3, is I'm going to, no, I'm going to do 3. So we're going to create some breakout rooms. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. And I'd like for you to think about mentor mindset. And so your prompt is, what would be the thing that you would say? And the reason I'm giving you not even 5 minutes, frankly, like a little bit less, is because when you're dealing with this, you probably have about 5 minutes. Okay. Reality of teaching is you probably have 5 minutes. So here is your 5 minutes. Here you go to your breakout rooms. I will see you in about 4.5 minutes. Okay. Okay.
Oh, hi. We came back. We got kicked out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, hi.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Hello. I feel
I
like
don't,
I work at your school, Sophia, all the time.
Yes, we're happy to
I
have
feel like
you.
like you must be so sick of me. Like,
No, we love it when you come.
okay. I'm like these poor people.
Not
And
at
my
all.
parents too.
Yeah. We're not gonna, I think I'm gonna have to choose not to just show you the second one. You don't have to do it on your own. Okay, better to do less is more, not push. Okay,
right.
it's hard for me. It's very hard for me. Let's see, people coming back. So, oh, here we are. Here we are. Adriana, Alini, Agnes, Liz. Hello.
Sorry.
Hello, everyone. Cody, hello, hello. Okay, I've decided. Remember, I said stick. I want to stick versus, keep going. So I would love to hear from people. What was some of the things that you were like that you talked about in your group that you want to remember when you get off this webinar? What were like one thing someone said or you thought about that you want to remember to say in this situation or an insight into the dynamics? Either way, I'd love two of them.
So I just want to apologize because at the beginning I lost the track of what was being said or read. And so Liz was explaining it to me. Thank you very much. And I was just saying that I would never call upon, I mean, when there's a bullying situation, usually what we do is we tell the counseling department to start talking to the kids. So we don't get them to do the meetings with the parents and talk
Mm,
about the bullying that we are watching. Uh, we get to support them this way by asking them to go ahead and start, finding out the details of everything. Um, and we can add to it because we're present in the class, but we're not. I mean, it's something that I would never do. When I do appointments with parents, it's because of, uh, the grades or whatnot, but not exactly bullying. That's
okay.
one thing that somebody else takes care of.
Okay.
So,
And do you feel like if a parent came to you and talked to you about it, would you feel, what would you say? So if, let me say it to you this way, Agnes. So that
mhm,
happens. Counselor does that. And then the
mhm.
parent comes up to you, they run into you in the school and they start talking to you about it. What do you do in that moment?
Um, so I've never encountered that situation, but I would say I would listen first, and I would say that I would what I see in class, not exactly mentioning names of students that are bullying, so keeping the names out. Because once you start giving names, it gets worse, I think.
Hmm.
Parents can be even worse than the kids by, stating to their kids, so it's whomever, Mary Jane, it's the one that's bullying you, and you have not, because kids say half of the story. So when they if they would approach me, I would never mention somebody else's name, even though I know the names and everything, but I would never mention the names just to keep uh, also the other kid, in a safe
Yeah.
place, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I would listen and I would say maybe let me speak to your kid and see what they have to say and do you want me to talk to him? Uh, what else can we do for them? But I would never, approach it the other way around where I agree, I saw her doing
Right.
this and
It's
this,
scary.
right?
This
Yeah.
is scary. So
Uh-huh.
Agnes brings up a really good point, right? That there's things that are like this thing that this situation I gave you that might direct at a counselor.
Mhm.
However, it is common if for parents to talk to you like this, right? You're going somewhere, you run into them somewhere, and they talk to you about it. So Agnes, does anybody else want to add to that before I give a little script I want to give you? Because Agnes gave this is a great example that Agnes has brought up. Okay. So what happens in that moment is you are getting blindsided, right? Agnes, you're walking down, you're wherever you are, and you get blindsided by the parent. Because if that parent, by the way, has an experience with the counselor, the result is something that they're not 100% pleased by, then you're the teacher, right? You're the main teacher. So the thing that's going to happen, very understandably, right, from the parent's point of view, is they're going to talk to you. And they're going to talk to you sometimes just like when you're doing a million other things. So when this happens, what I would like for you to do, remember your dignity, everybody's dignity, mentor mindset. The parent comes to you. I want some version, I'm suggesting to you to say something like, thank you for telling me, right? Thank you for telling me. My understanding is that the students have met with the counselor. Before I do anything else, I hear that you're not happy about what's happened, but let me go back to the counselor, and then the counselor and I will follow up with you later.
Mhm.
Done.
Yeah.
You do not want to get into a long conversation with the parent about that because you will lose. Because at some point, because you're uncomfortable, because you're nervous about saying the right thing, because they blindsided you. So thank you very much for telling me. I know that the counselors met with the students. Let me check with the counselor about what's happened, and then we will get back to you.
Mhm. Perfect.
You're done. You're done. Okay? All right. Any other insights for people about this? This is uncomfortable, right? Because this is stuff that happens in your classroom, and then you have a counselor who comes to deal with it, but you're the person who's deal with it on a day-to-day basis, right? Okay. So the webinars we're going to do next are actually going to be on social dynamics in young people, like how you actually handle the situation in the classroom. All right. Okay. So here's the thing that I want to ask you, and I want you to put this in the chat. I'm going to show you. We only missed one thing in this webinar. So, oh, they can see my application. You're seeing the screen, right,
Yeah.
Mr. Lopez? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a combination of several schools, like real situation. Both of them were. This is in our time, the time that we have remaining. This is something you could use if you want to with your faculty, if you want to take what you've learned with this webinar and share it with your colleagues. Here is another one. And the reason I really like this situation is because it squarely puts the teacher in the middle of many different people's agendas, many people's agendas. You've got the parents, you've got the coach, and you might have other students who are saying like, please let this child play. Like, I know he's a terrible kid and he's being mean to the other kids, whatever, but please, we want to win, let him play. So there's a whole lot going on in this situation. And so I want you to use this as a way to think about if you can get through this one, this is extra credit. But you can do this with your faculty as well if this is helpful to you. So I'm going to leave that, right, because we stuck on some other things. And then the last question, the last script for you is that particularly for people from the United States, we have a tendency to say, my door is always open as an ending to the meeting. That is not good enough, frankly. So what I would like is, because let me be more specific about what I mean by that, is that I worry that teachers, in our need to be partners with parents, that we don't establish good boundaries, right? And then parents violate those boundaries. But we have said that we're in a partnership, but we haven't said what those boundaries in that partnership are. And my door is always open is not a boundary. There is no boundary, and my door is always open. So here's another reframe for my door is always open. This has been hard, but I appreciate you working with me. We have a plan to move forward. I just want to say, in case something frustrating happens or makes you doubt me or our plan, what we've come up with, please tell me. Here is how, right? So the first paragraph is high support. Second paragraph is high expectations. Email me the basic problem or check in with your supervisors, or what the way is to communicate. Make sure to confirm receipt, because if I don't respond by 5 p.m., send it again, because y'all get a lot of emails. I commit to following up within. I would say your school probably has guidelines about that, 24 hours, 36 hours. I commit to listening so you and your child know I take the problem seriously and we are working together so your child feels they belong and can focus in class. They belong, support, focus in class, right? Okay. So that is a way to put boundaries around I am here for you. Because I don't want them calling you at 11 o'clock at night thinking that you should be on WhatsApp and thinking that they should get back to you. So you should get back to them. So I want you to remember to embrace dignity as a practice. It is not always about respect. It is always about dignity driving how we choose to lead, model, and repair. So, did you get what you need? I want you to think about one thing that you remember. I want you to put in the chat before we close out. What's one thing that you will remember from what you thought and felt or somebody else in the group said, like Mrs. Claire's comment about and really good, really good. So like what somebody else said, something that you want to remember that you can implement tomorrow, I want you to put into the chat, please. God, of course it went by really quickly. Of course these things do. Of course they do. And then if you want to, if we can have one or two people say it while people put it in the chat, and I'm going to save the chat. So we're going to save that so you can get that too. If one or two people would like to share that, that would be awesome. There we go. Save chat. And I want to thank Mrs. Claire for being up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Really, really appreciate that. I have to do that sometimes and wow, I struggle. So I really appreciate it. All right. Oh, here we go. Great. Okay, great. Boundaries, not walls. Anyone want to verbally say it? Thank you, Agnes. Seal is important to remember. Oh, just remember, I think maybe the A goes before the E. I think that's if I didn't say that, I want to remember to say that. I think maybe it's better to have the A before the E, but then you don't get the seal, and then you don't get the vision of the cute seals in your head. So, but I do think A might come before E. Acknowledge and affirm before you start explaining what the problem is. Okay, but just have those words in your head. Okay. All right, you all. Well, I'm 4 minutes over and you are teachers, so you need to have the end of your day. So thank you everybody for being here. And thank you everybody that when you see the recording, thank you so much. And I hope to see you again. Reach out to me with any questions, concerns, comments afterwards. And I am here for you always. All right. Thank you,
Thank
all.
you.
Have a good
Thank you
evening.
very
Talk
much.
to you later.
Thank
Mrs. Claire, go
you.
to bed.
Bye bye,
Okay.
I will.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Alina, you want to stay on?
I can stay.
Okay, I think let's stop the recording.
Yeah.